are you always wherever I'm doing a job? What do you got, some kind of spider sense or something?
That's funny you should say that.
The Spectacular Spider-Man, one of, if not the best Spider-Man animated series of all time. This show has bits of pretty much any Spider-Man media and executes it perfectly, like his many villains from the Sinister Six, which is the premises of this video. The Spectacular Spider-Man was the only Spider-Man to relate to his comic counterpart and beat all of the Sinister Six members in one fight, and he did that while asleep. A long story. But another series with a team of superpowered individuals is the Seven from The Boys, which, just like the Sinister Six, the Seven swap out members depending on the plot and story, giving more and more different results. Taking this, and Spider-Man and Homelander being debated about all the time, and a really cool animation coming out about Spider-Man vs. The Seven, I really wanted to cover this subject and really give my boy in red and blue some shine. But for this video in specific, if we replace the Sinister Six with the Seven, of any incarnation, could Spider-Man still win? But before we get into that, holy crap, we actually made it to 10,000 subscribers. That's 10,000 more people that's in Uranus! Before we really start the video, we gotta ask, who in the Seven will we be using in this video? And honestly, I was wanting to use every member we know of, similar to how the Sinister Six use different members every now and then, despite a lot of them not really changing the debate much, but it would just make the video overly longer than it has to be. Starting off with the strongest members, Homelander and Soldier Boy were obviously going to be in the Seven. They're the strongest and most deadly of the group, so it just makes sense. I'm also throwing OG Black Noir in, who is probably the third strongest. For a speedster, we obviously gotta pick the GOAT A-Train, the only guy to blitz Homelander and actually evade him. For a more versatile pick, Translucent may have been one of the first of the Seven to be killed, but it was through bypassing his impenetrable skin, and his invisibility would make him more fun to put up against Spider-Man. Queen Maeve would also be a good pick, because she can put up a fight against both Homelander and Stormfront, and is pretty skilled in her own right. And finally, Stormfront, not only because she can somewhat rival the top tiers with electrical-like abilities, but it's because it's what Clara would have wanted. So that's the lineup, and I gotta say, dear God, what have I done? Anyways, how powerful are these guys? Starting weakest to strongest, I would have to say Translucent's at the bottom. Yeah, ignoring his abilities and his enhanced skin, he doesn't have much to work with. He was beating up Butcher and Huey, who were just normal humans at the time, but his durability is something to work with. He's tanked multiple weapons that couldn't even harm him, and his skin did survive the arse bomb despite the fact his inner body didn't, and that's how he died. A C4 explosion, which would just be ranging in the wall to small building levels of power, which would be consistent for his durability, but again, his speed and strength would be on the level of a normal guy and wouldn't really help around here, except maybe sneaking around Spider-Man once, but do I even really need to say why that wouldn't work? Next character would actually have to be Stormfront. Besides her awesome lightning ability, she used the stun and fly around, she's just the weakest. She was nearly killed by one laser from Ryan, very new to his abilities, and got beaten up by Queen Maeve, Starlight, and Kimiko, and was still harmed by Homelander holding back during their weird sexy time. She did still blow up most of her building and fly fast enough to be comparable to a holding back Homelander. I don't think that really gives us any stats to work with, and she just downscales from Queen Maeve, who actually does have a line of scaling we can use. She could harm a holding back Homelander, but her main talked about feat here is surviving Soldier Boy's explosion, which completely annihilated other supes, a city block, and damaged the surrounding areas to a higher city block level. Most casts would get this to 69.8 tons of TNT, which is pretty consistent with the city block being a high end for most of the supes in the Boys universe. Now, the scaling for the original Black Noir is honestly the most straightforward so far. He tanked Nakib's, the super terrorist explosion, with barely a reaction, and that has calcs from Walter's large building level, and easily decapitated him and tanked a bunch of Soldier Boy's attacks. Homelander did one-shot Noir, but he was off-guarded. In the cartoon, however, Noir actually evaded Homelander and survived the gas explosion, which reached the calcs of the city block to small town levels of power. Now, before we talk about strength, let's yap about speed and the GOAT A-Train. I've already did my own calculations on his feat in Season 5, which is still way faster than any of his other scaling and is the fastest feat in the Boys. But who actually scales to this level of speed? Nobody. Homelander got blitzed by this speed, and it seemed like a one and done feat since Homelander was able to keep up with A-Train's casual speeds when he was running away. And going from their showings, Homelander just doesn't scale to the top speed of A-Train. Okay. When A-Train was ripping off X-Men, he was able to blitz around the area before Homelander's laser vision could kill Huey. But considering how we never see the lasers actually move fast enough to beat top tier supes or even compared to other people with super speed, the best we can argue is something like the lasers reaching the plane while moving in episode 1. The plane is a whatever I type on screen, which moves at speeds up to Mach 0.8, going by the distance of the laser moving halfway from Homelander's arm to nearly at Huey,
We just need to find the distance. Luckily, I got to use a pixel calculator thingy and got the distance scaling from Anthony Starr's height to 37.19 centimeters. For the previous speed to travel this distance, it would take 0.00135 seconds. Yet it took 25 cinematic seconds for A-Train's perspective, or 18,518.5 times faster than the laser, or Mach 14.814.8. But in terms of attack potency and durability, A-Train doesn't exactly have much to work with besides beating up Kimiko, so he'd probably be in the wall to small building levels of range, just like the rest. Finally, we get to Soldier Boy and Homelander, who roughly have the same scaling. Soldier Boy needed help and struggled to take Homelander in Season 3, conceded to being weaker in Season 5, and then got choked out and taken out of the season finale. But from how the other characters showed against him in both seasons he's appeared in, he does seem to be stronger than the rest. Soldier Boy has his own bomb statements, being stated to probably need a hydrogen bomb to take him out, which can range anywhere from the low to high megatons. But he hard caps at Homelander's high ends, like the V1 laser calc, which got to 181 megatons, until Homelander's flight, which he was able to travel to outer space and back in a few seconds. You know, before the season finale kind of shit on that. The feat itself was calculated to Mach 222, which would also give a level up to A-Train's casual speeds. And for their abilities, Soldier Boy can generate an explosion that zaps the V out of someone's bloodstream and depowers them, and Homelander has the ability to fly, fire lasers, and technically supersonic tantrums, if we include the comics for funsies. How would any of this compare to a literal teenager? When it comes to your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, he has his own feats and showings under his belt, and while some people wanted me to use scaling from Spider-Verse Miles and a simple cameo, and scaling to Tobey and the comic Spider-Man from recreating some of their scenes, he doesn't do any of the crazier feats. It's really just a reference, and I don't think I should be taking that.
It don't matter!
Now, for his most consistent scaling, it comes from Peter beating up his rogues gallery, and tanking a lot of what they can dish out, such as Shocker's blast, causing tremors across Manhattan, and Rhino causing a crater just from falling. These feats both reach over half a ton of TNT, easily in the building range, and both showings weren't really either character trying, and when they do fight Spider-Man, they do a lot more damage. With multiple other villains and himself tanking attacks that level bigger buildings, which Spider-Man will walk off right after it crumbled down on the top of both of them, he'd probably easily range in the large building level yield. Thankfully, we do get more of a cap to where the villains may scale, like when Electro's powers went so crazy that he turned an entire pool of water into steam. Now, this feat was from a weakened and inexperienced Electro who got punched into said pool by Spider-Man after generating an energy through an entire metal tower, but it is from episode 2 of season 1, and all the villains, including Electro, do improve their abilities and get stronger, just like it's shown in episode 11. This feat in question was calculated to a much higher 571 tons of TNT, which would be more consistent with higher calcs of Shocker's tremors from shaking a wide area of Manhattan. With all this, Spider-Man would scale to these levels of power, and so would the other villains just from scaling directly to him. This would also include dodging Electro's lightning, which would easily give him relativistic combat speeds, which would be consistent with how most of the villains also scale to Electro in some way and would just keep up with Spidey. So that's his stats with a cap of power from Venom and Rhino, both of which Spider-Man has beaten despite being weaker and slower in certain encounters. As well, Spider-Man has also faced multiple combatants at once, including when the symbiote used his body to defeat the Sinister Six while Peter was actually asleep and right after the villains upgraded their tech, which would upscale Season 2 Spider-Man and Venom, since Venom would just be upscaling from Black Suit Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is able to contend with him pretty well. And just like most of his fights with his villains, Spidey uses a mix of his intellect and the weaknesses of the guy he's fighting, including using the other guy's abilities, trying to push it on the first guy like he's playing Pokemon. As well as the spider sense, he has multiple web shooters that produce either rapid bullet webs, reflecting webs, web vines, web bombs, etc, to use when needed. But will it be enough? Assuming the battle's more of a neutral ground, bits of city block destroyed, debris everywhere, blah blah blah, the Seven are all together in one place and all the civilians ran away so Spider-Man can go all out without needing to save anyone. The Seven see Spidey as a threat and want to pin the destruction on him. Spidey's mortals won't let that happen, and then they start to scrap. How would the fight go? Spidey does beat multiple villains by using their weaknesses against one another, and the Seven hates each other even more than the Sinister Six do, so don't expect any planned strategies. Hell, Sister Sage didn't even do that, which is why she wasn't even included in the set, despite being technically the smartest, but not really. In terms of physicals, Spidey's higher ends would be comparable to Soldier Boy's explosion at the high end, which nearly killed Queen Maeve and upscale Stormfront, Translucent, and be comparable to Black Noir. Spidey's combat speed and reactions combined with his spider sense would make it pretty difficult for anyone to catch up, including A-Train. Now, since Spider-Man doesn't kill, and he is stronger than the first four, he likely could wear them down and take them out by webbing them up. Translucent would try to catch Spidey off guard, but Spider sense would shut that shit down quickly, and the others would be dealt with pretty handily. A-Train might be the fastest of the group, but if he's webbed up, he's not going anywhere. He literally got his leg broken by Kimiko, and he was not really a threat anymore. So yep, he's out of it like that too. Now, the biggest problems were always going to be Soldier Boy and Homelander, since they are so strong that Spidey would have trouble. However, Maeve also was weaker, and so was the boys, yet they both did Homelander and Soldier Boy dirty in their fights. Even if we ignore that, a huge problem is if Peter was ever in contact with Soldier Boy's explosion, which can remove the V from someone's bloodstream. Now, depending on how it works, that could be a problem, as you see a plot device in Spectacular Spider-Man was something called a gene cleanser, something that can remove all mutations to the person, and works very similar to how Soldier Boy's explosion works. So Soldier Boy could be a threat in that way, if it ever hit. Again, the combination of Spider Sense and his superior speed would make it pretty difficult for SB to be able to actually hurt SM. And considering he can only use this ability while getting Rage Beta, and Spidey is quite the Rage Beta, Spidey could pretty much Pokemon it and potentially just get Soldier Boy to turn it on Homelander. And depower Homelander just from standing there. Even ignoring that, Spidey did give Venom the cleanser despite still being weak and slow and being unprepared in the fight. So he definitely could outwit the guys and just get that shit done. Now, if it was a 1v1 against Homelander, he might have a chance still. Maeve did pretty well on an unserious Homelander, but the moment he got serious, she was screwed. Spider-Man would be in a similar space here, but unironically, he would do much better if he fought Homelander and Soldier Boy at the same time. He could easily web Homelander's eyes and he'd laser them off just to kill another member of the Seven, and Homelander just wouldn't know or care that he did that because he's a friggin' idiot. Which would eventually lead to the Seven being dead, but Spider-Man not killing any of them. Yeah, that's probably how I'd predict the fight would go.
No!